I'm gonna go over the second method that I use for combining glazes, coming up with new glaze combinations, testing things, whatever. The first one I talked about in the last video was about being intentional, and you have a plan, you have a purpose, you're intentional. This one is exactly the opposite, and it's probably my favorite because that's my personality. You're gonna have one that you like better than the other, and it's just winging it, just going for it. I use it if maybe I have a creativity block. A lot of times if the kiln has some empty spaces, I'm in a hurry and I want to get things going and fired and me get out of here, I'll go and I'll grab like a second off the shelf. I'll walk over to my glazes that I dip and I'll just dip, or walk over to glazes on the shelf. Usually I dip, but over to glazes on my shelf and, you know, throw some stuff on. Just see what happens. Throw it in the kiln, make sure you stilt it. Some practical things are use your common sense as a potter, which is things maybe that you've learned along the way. So glaze and clay compatibility. Some glazes just do not go on certain clays. So don't be throwing them on seconds to test them. You already know that they don't work, right? The next one is, for me, I don't put a matte glaze on the bottom and a flexi glaze on the top. Historically, it bubbles, and so I'm not even gonna waste my time. The other thing is, if I use like a really flowy glaze on the top, really flowy glaze on the bottom, I barely overlap them. So these are things that you learn and you know, and depends on what glazes you use. You're gonna have a different list of things to do and not to do. So you're not just winging it and just doing stuff that you know already doesn't work. You're just winging it within the confines of what does work, if that makes sense. So an example is the river bend. And I love this. So it was late one night. I had a web drop and I had a top shelf that was empty. And so I went and grabbed some seconds off my top shelf, went over to my dipping glazes because I was in a hurry. I wanted to go home, go to bed. Dipped the bottom in the blue, dipped the top in the white. Very boring and a waste of a second just to do two. So I went and grabbed some more off my shelf, threw them together, stuck it in there. I did the Rebecca mug the same. Came in the morning and this is what I had. So, and I love it. And I do the moss, has got the green. It's exactly the same, it just has the green on the bottom. So that's an example of something that worked, but because it's a test, it's okay if it doesn't. You're just figuring out what works and what doesn't work together. This one did not work. So I have this one now that sits on my shelf and reminds me what not to do. And it's okay, it doesn't work, I don't like it. I really don't like anything about it. I wasted a perfectly good mug, I didn't use a second. And, you know, learned from that. Though I've learned that lesson like 100 times and I don't seem to learn it, but use only a second. So it's okay if it doesn't turn out okay, because I know not to use this glaze on this clay. And I know I don't like this green, like at all. So that's, you know, an example of something that doesn't turn out, because it's gonna be a 50-50 split on what does turn out and what doesn't turn out. This is another one that I did. So, and this one's kind of a little bit bubbly, but I have, you know, I do these ones all the time. This one I have sitting on my shelf because it just didn't fire correctly. I don't know why. But that was just, I just wung it. So, and you can see, like, I have a lot of glazes on there. On this one, I have a lot of glazes. And this is, just to show you, it's not the prettiest example, though I think it's pretty awesome cool the more I look at it, is to see if you're going to use a second, then go ahead and use a lot of glazes. Don't waste just 2 or 3, go with, you know, 4 minimum. You can do more than that if you want. So practical example, very quickly. Walking here, I saw a pretty rose, the fuchsia and the yellow in the center. So I come here, I'm gonna be glazing today. I'll go, let's dip the bottom in the fuchsia, let's dip the top in the yellow. Where they overlap or combine, as I call it, it's gonna create just a different color. So I'm gonna have a spot there that's gonna be a little bit different. So I'm gonna see what that looks like. Maybe I'll leave some exposed clay on the bottom to see how that works. It's a flower, maybe I can add some white, if I have some white with a little bit of flux, or like a clear or something that has a little bit of flux, maybe add it here, not at the rim because it's gonna run off the rim. You know, add it a little bit below and not at the bottom because it's gonna run off, right? Maybe some green here. You can always, if you have like a flux or something, you don't have to brush it. Just go ahead, just, you know, dab it on. You don't always have to brush stuff. So especially if you already have your coats and it's thick enough, you have to watch the thickness of it. So that would be my second method. I just wing it. I have good things, I have bad things, it doesn't matter. And give it a whirl. Let me know what you think, and happy glazing. Thanks.